Blitz is defined as a sudden, savage attack. It is indeed all this. The effect is sure. The premise is simple. It's a basic, primal confrontation, man to man. No excuses are offered, none accepted.
Welcome to the latest edition of Longhorn Blitz with horns247.com.
It's like a radio station.
Now, here are your hosts, lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers,
Pure athlete, yeah.
I transcend race, hombre.
Matt Butler,
I don't talk, man. I back it up.
And we are chock full of that, man.
Damn right.
and Jeff Howe.
It's still real to me, damn it.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
If you're gonna blitz, come strong, but don't come at all.
Coming strong with another edition of Longhorn Blitz with Horns 24/7. I'm Jeff Howe. Let's not waste any time. Let me bring in the rest of the team. He is the master of the soundboard, the drop machine extraordinaire. Matt Butler, how are you, sir?
Doing well, man. How about yourself?
What are you working on, man? You got a chart
Some
over
esports. Yep. And I had to find a way to make money, but it's actually these kids. There are no substitutions, and they don't get tired. So like the starters play, and it's about that easy.
Matt's got graph paper over here working on.
Got my charts, got my number from last night, late last night, and you got all the numbers there.
What is this again?
DraftKings has always had like esports, like video games. So like it's the same thing.
I get you.
A lot of it's structured similar to like basketball, or in theory like the scoring sort of like volleyball, but
Interesting.
assists, kills, things like that.
I don't know if the third member of our team, our lockdown corner here on the show, knows a lot about esports, but he is a renaissance man, not just here on Longhorn Blitz, but on 104.9 The Horn, when you catch him each and every weekday from 3 to 7 as part of that triple option afternoon show. Lifetime Longhorn, 2002 UT All-American, 2002 semifinalist for the Jim Thorpe Award, fourth-round draft choice of the New York Giants in 2003, spent his NFL career with the Giants, Lions, Bears, Bucks, Broncos, and a year with the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the CFL. When he was done with football, he got himself back to Austin, Texas, and the 40 acres, where he earned his degree. Whenever that T-ring comes in, we will make sure he wears it proudly. Nevertheless, he is a card-carrying member of DBU, and when you get that All-American honor recognized by the NCAA, they make sure you get one of those black cards. Number 21 in your program, number 1 in your hearts, Mr. Rod Babers.
Thanks for the intro, brother.
Rod,
Impressive as always.
How's everything going, Rod? You good?
Everything's good. Yeah, man. Everything's real good. Could use some sports, but it's all right. Still blessed.
We've got the Last Dance
Healthy.
and other things to.
Yeah.
We're running that draft conversation as long as we can milk that
Keep
thing
it going.
for.
NFL is going to release the schedule soon. You'll have that.
Very true.
And yeah, I mean, we're so bored now. We're talking about Texas versus Texas A&M again. So you know how that goes. That's how you know you've gotten to the dead zone of sports.
See,
here
I
in the
saw
South.
though on SportsCenter this morning, the Korean Baseball League has launched off, and you used to only see this league when there'd be massive bat flips, like when it was the one league where you saw like actual fun in baseball, and you'd see like pitchers like going at batters and vice versa. So like at least there's one sport somewhere, but it was where they were able to contain everything.
Rod, you mentioned the Texas A&M thing. Chris Del Conte did a virtual chat with us at Horns 24/7 this week, and mentioned that Texas is trying to schedule opponents that have played for, won national championships in the modern era of college football. And of course, that's poking the bear because the Aggies haven't done that. But I compare the conversation as kind of like a prostate exam. Like, you know you're going to have to deal with it, but nobody likes it. It's a necessary evil.
I think every year it's seasonal, like the flu. It just comes up every now and then. Sorry, that's insensitive during the COVID time.
But it's also worth pointing out that we need to distinguish modern era, because this is post-World War II. Because there's a difference. Like some people think Super Bowl era is like, well, that's only like 1967 on.
Yeah.
Like baseball, you talk about the modern era. Some people talk like post-1890. We're talking college football. It's pretty old school. We're talking World War II days. So we're talking
what's the modern era?
Like 80 years.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Look, and Aggies, you can get mad at me. I don't really care at this point. If Hitler was alive the last time you won a national championship, it's been too long.
He wasn't just alive. He was a good guy.
And
people thought he was a good. Most of the world didn't know he was evil yet.
Yes.
Like people were like, he was Time Magazine Man of the Year at one point. And
Yeah,
I don't know what year
36.
was that, right?
Yeah.
So people, I think that within like 2 or 3 years of that, he was Time Magazine Man of the Year. So people still thought he was a good guy.
1938. So
that's what I'm saying. Last time you won a national title, people thought Hitler was a good guy. There you go. That's a problem.
It's got problems.
What is it, John David Crow days?
No, John David Crow was like in the 50s. That was like.
They were still they're still deciding between, well, is he a good guy? What's he doing over there? No, he's a horrible, horrible human being.
Well, I know a few people that are happy, Rod, or some assistant coaches at Texas who, as of today that we're recording this show, the UT Board of Regents is going to approve these contracts, some extensions and raises for Herb Hand, Stan Drayton, and Yancey McKnight. So before we get into the raises, let's do the rundown here of contract extensions and the new assistants getting their contracts executed. So all the assistant coaches the following assistant coaches are going to have contracts that run through the 2021 season. Okay? So it's Chris Ash, Herb Hand, Stan Drayton, Mark Hagan, we'll throw Yancey McKnight in there, Oscar Giles, and Jay Valai. All those, basically, with the exception of Chris Ash, your non-coordinator coaches are all on 2-year deals that are going to run through 2021.
Makes sense. That's the only way you could get them here.
Right.
They weren't going to come on short deals.
Andre Coleman's deal is listed as a year-to-year contract.
Makes sense to me.
Type of guy.
The two exceptions, Jay Boulware got a 3-year deal through the 2022 season. Mike Yursich is on a 3-year deal through the 2022 season, which Mike Yursich, that guaranteed contract, paying him $1.7 million a year again. I think we've talked ad nauseum on the show about how we agree that that's probably worth it. Your salary ranges: Jay Valai at $300,000 a year, Andre Coleman at $350,000 a year. Again, all the way up to Mike Yursich at $1.7 million. Chris Ash making $800,000. And you might say, well, Todd Orlando was making more as the defensive coordinator, and did the salaries just flip flop? No, because I think Tim Beck's base salary was more than what Chris Ash was making. But keep in mind too. Wow. Rutgers is still paying Chris Ash off of that contract there. So it's not like Chris Ash is underpaid or underfunded. He's got that revenue stream still coming in from Rutgers.
And if he does well, just like Orlando, I'm sure he'll get a bump somewhere. If it's a really good defense, which it will be in the first year. We know that.
Yeah,
that
you're in year 3, because we're talking about Orlando's third year.
Yeah.
Now, real quick on that, though. People might say, well, you gave the last 2 defensive coordinators that had a really good year. We did it with Manny Diaz. You did it with Todd Orlando. I don't think Vance got the bump, but both those guys have gotten like raises, and basically you elevated those guys after one good year. Would you do that again with Chris Ash? I think you almost have to, don't you? Because that's just the nature of the beast with coordinators in college football right now.
Yeah, especially and in the Big 12. I mean, if you can, you can coach a competent defense in the Big 12, I think it means even more.
Agreed.
That first
so his value should be even higher in theory if he's good. He's proven me money.
Ain't no doubt. Totally agree.
Yeah, so just be on the lookout for that, and we'll get to some buy or sell over under stuff in this show, and we'll carry it over to next week and talking about how much this defense is going to get elevated as one of those, and I think we might all be on the same page with that. But Ron, I want to talk about the salary increases, the raises for some of these assistant coaches. We'll start with Stan Drayton. Stan Drayton going from $515,000 a year to $650,000 a year. That's a $135,000 increase. I would think you do that for 2 reasons. One, I think the running back position was improved last year with Roschon Johnson moving over. And you look at Keontae, we talked about this before. You look at Keontae Ingram's numbers, he averaged almost a full yard per carry more as a sophomore than he did as a freshman. Mm-hmm. And I'm of the opinion the running game was not your problem last year. I think it was either going away from the run too early or not sticking with the run enough in some games. And then at times where you couldn't run. The one game where you really couldn't run the ball was the Iowa State game, which was the one game seemingly where you wanted to go square peg round hole. So, the situations that Stan Drayton really didn't have a lot of control over were perplexing. But Rod, you got the good year from Roschon Johnson, and more importantly, your job as the running backs coach, you got to be an ace recruiter, and Stan Drayton got Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, you got a 5-star.
That's the main thing.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I mean, you ended, I think, with the biggest reason. You get a 5-star running back in there, what some people call the best running back in the country. I think that'll get you a bump right there. And I agree with you. The running back position with Rojo, that was an amazing coaching feat. And I think he's a natural runner anyway, but still, I mean, he hit the ground running, literally and figuratively. No pun intended there. And I think Keontae Ingram was great, but he was inconsistent. He was a roller coaster, which is what you get from a young player. There really wasn't much of a baseline game to game. You didn't know what you were going to get from Keontae Ingram. He could be looking like the best player on the field, or he could go out there and end up looking like, why is this guy starting over Rojo? Is what the question most people would be asking. So I just don't know about the consistency, but yeah, I'm a Keontae Ingram fan. He's just got to get a better baseline where his production level doesn't always dip all the time. You know what I mean? I think it dipped probably every other game or so, especially early on.
And that's where, like, marrying the two, because you talk about a running backs coach, and a lot of the times, like, at every school it is different, but recruiting does mean a lot, say, to go. And so it depends on how you're weighing everything along those lines, and then the allocation of, you know, not necessarily blame, but for deficiencies, where do those go? And every case-by-case basis is so tough. But when you look at who he has in the room, like you said, he's been able to not only have one guy in Ingram that's maybe been able to gradually improve, but he lands the future, which is key if you're going to say, well, maybe he isn't keeping that room as optimal, but he's getting the big-time players to show up on campus. And those are the type of things that you need at Texas. And right now, you look at the room, you got a freshman that's a big-time man on campus, another guy with some gradual growth, and then, like you said, everything he did with Roschon, that could either be just because Roschon's a high football IQ guy, or it could be marrying the two, that the running back coach helps articulate these things to.
Yeah, and he's got to coach up Jordan Whittington and Jake Smith in that H role when they decide that, you know, they're going to be running backs in whatever formation or personnel package you're going to use too. So he's integral right now. I mean, at Standrade, and he had competition. You know, I mean, the Rams reportedly were interested in bringing in Standrade.
Cowboys were
Cowboys.
interested.
So, you know, when there's competition like that, that's why Jay Boulware got the salary and the length of the contract he got. You're trying to take him from somewhere. There's competition there. Yurcich, same thing, competition. So that always helps you in terms of negotiating a contract.
And then, you know, talking about Herb Hand, too, and the coaches and how much those two sort of align together, running backs coach conceptually with offensive line. I don't know the relationship between the two, but I assume it's very good. Yeah. So that's why those type of things, they sort of go together.
Good point.
So Herb Hand's raise, Rod, is roughly $60,000 a year. Herb Hand's going to make $700,000 a year to coach the offensive line. Again, that contract's going to go through 2021. And that's the one that, if you ask the fans, that's the one that they wonder, is that deserved? You know, should you be giving Herb Hand that much money? I don't know that if it's deserved or not, but I will say this. This is a huge year for Herb Hand, not just in terms of what your offensive line can do, but, man, in terms of recruiting. You look at the O-line talent in the state of Texas, and it starts with a legacy player in Tommy Brockermeyer, who's one of the top offensive line prospects in the country. If you're Herb Hand, you've got this much talent in the state of Texas, and nationally, when you look at a kid like Jonah Miller out of the state of Arizona who's interested in you, if you don't come out of this with one of the top 2 or 3 offensive line classes in the country, at some point you're going to have to answer for that. Now, is that all on Herb Hand? The coordinator's got to play a part in that. You got area guys, whatever. But Rod, there's a lot on Herb Hand. And then when you look at the offensive line, you've got a left tackle, a guy at a premium position who, say what you want about him, Mel Kiper has Sam Cosmi ranked as the number 12 overall draft eligible prospect in college football. And the number 2 offensive tackle behind Penei Sewell out of Oregon, who people throw that label, generational tackle prospect, on Penei Sewell. And you're saying Sam Cosmi's got a chance to be number 2 in a draft class with him. You've got that kind of talent at a premium position. Man, your offensive line better produce.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And, you know, I like Herb Hand's personality. He is, you know, he's a social media samurai, man. He's always
grilling
on there.
steaks.
Yeah, so I think he will, just in recruiting, I think he'll be able to pull one of those big prospects. I'm not sure which one, but I think he will. I really do, because I think he has a great personality of an offensive lineman. Now, that's different than what is being taught on the field, because last year the offensive line regressed. All right, Sam Ehlinger was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the Big 12 in terms of sacks per game, so they allowed a lot of pressure. The running game at times was inconsistent. There were games where you couldn't impose your will on teams. So, yeah, I mean, Herb Hand's, I think Matt's right. I think there's a connection when you look at the pro spread philosophy, which we know Tom Herman, he was committed to keeping the pro spread. He likes the pro spread. He thinks that in terms of a vision of what could be a championship caliber offense, he likes what he brings to the table. That's why he brought in Yurcich to basically interpret or reinterpret that offense. But I think it's key, his offensive line and the running game, to kind of working in continuity, to be working symbiotically. And I think that's why Herb Hand means so much to him. He would hate to have to come in, bring in a new offensive line coach, and then think about how fragmented the philosophy would be if he did that. So I think there's a method to the madness, and Herb Hand's a big part of that.
You mentioned the sack numbers, and I love Football Outsiders, because Football Outsiders does sack rate, which is percentage of dropbacks that result in a sack. And Texas was one of the worst offensive lines in the country. And then when you look at sack rate, standard down sack rate, passing down sack rate, however you want to slice it, Texas was one of the worst offensive lines in the country.
Yep.
And Matt, I know you've got the numbers in front of you too, as I do. When you look at some of the run game metrics, Rod, whether you're talking about line yards per carry, standard down line yards per carry,
great.
opportunity rate, the Texas offensive line was really
One of the
good.
best in the country.
Near elite.
But where do they struggle? And you could say this might be the biggest indictment when we talk about that consistency factor of Herb Hand. Power success rate, percentage of your runs on 3rd and 4th down with 2 or fewer yards to go that achieved a first down or a touchdown. Texas was 91st in the country as an offensive line in power success. Rod, as an offensive line, that's your money down. Third and short, 4th and short. That's where you've got to displace a defender. You got to move a man against his will and allow your ball carrier to get a first down or a touchdown.
And you had Bam Bam Sam in that situation. I think that's more on the scheme, though, and that's remember Ed Orgeron talking about how he knew they were running the quarterback power.
True.
There were reports that TCU and Gary Patterson, like they basically knew when Texas was going to run a lot of their plays while the DBs were running routes for the receivers. So I think there was how predictable the offense became, and that predictability, that rigidity, right? To 11 personnel, it's got to be this, got to be that. All that rigidity, I think ultimately it led to the regression on the offensive line, especially in situations where 2018 you were dominant. You were arguably one of the best teams in the country in those 4th and short and 3rd and short situations.
Yep.
That's why I started calling them Bam Bam Sam, and you regressed on that, and that was troubling.
And something that adds to what you're saying on the predictability, and the numbers even sort of show it right here. And I haven't seen one team, actually it looks like Toledo does have a worse ratio than Texas does. But if we're talking about power success rate, like you said, 91st. But when you look at stuff rate, which in theory should correlate well with it, but it doesn't.
Right.
Texas is 10th in the nation in stuff rate, meaning they are not getting stuffed very often ever.
At the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage.
Yes, somehow on 3rd and short and 4th and short they are. And that's strictly what you're saying, Rod. That's being predictable. Yeah. That's in those situations. You're saying most of the time, and it's going to cause the coaches to become more predictable. They're like, well, look at our stuff rate. We're never getting pushed back. We need to just go, and we need to get it. But if you're telegraphing what you're doing, then it's going to be something that you can be 10th in the nation in stuff rate. But in power success rate, you're 91st. So situationally, you aren't there. It's a big drastic thing. Toledo's worse. It looks like Lulaw's in the same area. But to be 81 spots worse, that's remarkable, and that sort of articulates why. And then when you look, one thing I agree with you fully about the sack rate. Texas should be much better than they are. But when you have a dual threat quarterback, a running quarterback, your sack rate's naturally going to be higher than if you don't, strictly because he's able to move around in the pocket. And if you get tackled 1 yard behind, he can go down as a sack with the quarterback. So mobile quarterback sack rate has to be compared to other mobile quarterback sack rate, compared to just an in-the-pocket, statuesque quarterback. If Brady's getting sacked that much, then you got a horrid offensive line. If Sam Ehlinger is, sometimes there can be noise there, and it's just you behind the line of scrimmage making plays with your feet getting tackled.
Well, and that's also scheme, too, because we talked about how very few design quarterback runs they had in the offense. We were shocked, actually, at how few they actually had in between the 20s. And also, the scheme of them, they were very simplistic. Very little creativity with the quarterback run game for Texas. So it kind of gets to your point, but I think we're all kind of making the same point. I mean, it gets back to the scheme and the coaching, ultimately. And that's why you have to make a damn change.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And some of these numbers, you got to really look into them. Like Texas in 2018, in terms of sack rate, they were pretty much middle of the road, middle of the pack in all the metrics. Your point, how scheme can benefit you. This is why sacks can be such a misleading stat.
It is.
It is.
Pressure
is the best
much more accurate. I agree.
Not top 3 in the country the last 2 years in sack rate allowed. Washington State. They were number 1 in 2018, number 3 last year. Well,
they're getting
rid of the ball so quick.
And they're holding on to it till the last second because there's no other option. You got to throw the ball or not. There's no other thing to read it.
Totally agree.
But I think the point is that we're getting at with Herb Hand and I mean, look, $60,000 raise for an assistant coach at Texas. That's like me getting a $20 raise. It's dropping the bucket. But I think when you look at do you reward an offensive line coach? I think this year, Rod, is going to be the year where kind of the proof is going to put in for Herb Hand. When you look at year 1, any improvement would have been improvement from what the 2017 line was, which we all agree is one of the worst offensive lines we've seen in the history of this program. And injuries had a lot to do with that, but, man, the talent just wasn't there. And then you look at 2018, you get a pretty much a full year out of Zach Shackelford. Yeah, he missed 4 games, but you had him down that back stretch when you started to become really good, and you found a diamond in the rough in Sam Cosmi and all these other factors. You get Calvin Anderson in as a grad transfer, and last year, the offensive line, it was kind of went hand in hand with the offense. Like 1 week, it would be like, wow, they can run the ball, move the ball on anybody in the country, and the very next week, it's like, man, I don't know if they can move it against Prairie View. I hate going to Prairie View.
I know.
Well, you need a battery.
Yeah,
you need
but
somebody.
you're right.
There's going to be a pinata. You got to pick somebody.
I do that too. I always bring up Prairie View.
Say directional state U.
I apologize to the entire SWAC conference. So let me just throw that out there. But no, but it's one of those deals, right? Like the proof is in the pudding for Herb Hand. This is the year where it's got to come together. You better clearly by seasons. And I'll tell you what, if we're at the end of the season and Texas isn't one of the top 1, 2, 3 offensive lines in the Big 12, then you're not going to see the 9 or 10 or 11 wins that we think this team is capable of.
Totally agree with you on that. If that offensive line underachieves, then ultimately the whole damn thing will collapse. It'll hurt Sam's draft stock. Sam won't get drafted as high. They don't. The wide receivers are very unproven commodities at this point. And I've said my prediction is the offensive identity of this team is going to revolve around the run game and that really talented backfield, which includes Sam Ehlinger as a dual threat quarterback too. So it's gonna, and Sam's going to have to make a lot of plays, throwing guys open. You know what I mean? Being as accurate as he's ever been, because I don't think these young wide receivers are going to be creating a ton of separation. Hopefully the scheme will do that. But last year, another thing, the route tree, as you pointed out, had very few limbs, right? Very few branches on that route tree, and that also helps. So I think scheme is going to end up helping a lot of the issues that we saw last year with the offensive line.
So I want to get to real quick before we get to some buy or sell stuff.
And hopefully they can pick up a twist and a stunt.
Gosh, man, that's you know what though? Honestly, like
up a twist and a stunt.
Kenneth Murray and Neville Gallimore had their draft stock elevated because of that Texas game.
Yes,
no doubt.
Oh,
like that's
Neville Gallimore had his best game of his career in that one.
And that's sad. That's an indictment of your offensive line when you have a game where the opposing defense has multiple guys like, oh yeah, I want that on my draft highlight.
It's crazy, man.
Well, and there are a few things to be really critical of Herb Hand, but like say something like that, the inability to adjust in a game that big, which was seemed as something that was obvious. It just seems as if maybe the message wasn't getting to the players, or just conceptually the players weren't getting it, but as a collective whole, that was pretty big. It seemed like a simple fix that wasn't fixed.
I think the bottom line for me on Herb Hand is this, guys, and I like Herb Hand as an offensive line coach.
I do too.
I've sat in a clinic and listened to him lecture, and I like his approach to O-line play. But I think it's clear, Rod, the honeymoon period is over, right? Like the first year, like, okay, like you have a competent offensive line, and then last year, you left some meat on the bone, kind of like Sam did and the entire offense did. You feel like you got to the end and that turkey leg wasn't picked clean, man. There's still some meat on that bone. And now it's like, all right, it's a put up or shut up kind of year for everybody, offensive line included.
Well, when you got a guy that's, like I said, a potential first-round pick, he's going to, unless something really bad happens, and he's not. And that would be going to your underachieving thing. If Sam Cosmi at this point is not a first-round pick, like everybody's predicting, then that means that goes back to the talent development, bigger issues. So, yeah, the offensive line is key, man, this year. I mean, that's supposed to be a strength. If it's not a strength, there's a problem.
Because, let's continue.
There's a problem if it's not a strength this year, man.
Oh, yeah, because you haven't had a guy like Cosmi, like, I can't even, since you were on campus.
Yeah, I mean, I'm serious, like a tackle.
I didn't think about
it. A first-round tackle, like a top 10 kind of tackle.
You had two of them with Leonard and Mike.
Okay, I wanted to get some stuff on this Caden Stearns Zoom conference, but no. I want to shelve that now because I want to go down this Cosmi road since we're there. Mm-hmm. When you look at him as a tackle prospect, Rod, and the comparison is going to be, well, you know, we sat here and everybody talked about Connor Williams being a first-round pick. Well, yeah, everybody was talking about Connor Williams as a first-round pick. But there were two really big knocks on Connor Williams as the draft process went along. One, his arm length or lack thereof was not desirable.
Yeah.
70, I think a 77 3/4 inch wingspan.
Yeah.
Which for NFL tackle standards is
huge.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah.
And then the fact that he didn't have consistent tape in the games he was able to play his last year at Texas, which meant his best year was in the veer and shoot offense, which, as we've seen with some Baylor offensive linemen under Art Briles, that offense doesn't have a great track record of producing quality NFL offensive linemen. It's gotten guys drafted high.
Yeah.
Like Danny Watkins was drafted high. Jason Smith, I think, was the second or third pick in the draft when he came out. But those guys haven't been successful at the pro level. So those are two really big knocks on Connor Williams. We don't figure scheme is going to be a problem because Tom Herman's offense, there's a lot of that translates well to the NFL level in that power spread, pro spread, whatever label you want to put on it. And from a physical standpoint, Rod, like I said, Connor Williams' wingspan when he came out was, I think, 77 3/4 inches. Last spring, Sam Cosmi's wingspan was measured at 80 5/8.
Yeah.
Not elite, but when you look at some of the first-round tackles that came out in this year's draft, Sam Cosmi has a longer wingspan than Tristan Wirfs. Now, Tristan Wirfs, and we all agree, you see the video of him jumping out of the pool, really athletic tackle. But I think we see some of that athleticism in Sam Cosmi. So the concerns about Connor Williams as a draft prospect aren't going to be the same concerns with Sam Cosmi
Totally agree.
as a prospect.
Yeah.
So to your point, if we're getting to him making a decision whenever, and look, maybe it's January, I don't know when the season's going to start, I don't know when the draft's going to be, the early entry deadline, all that stuff's going to have to change if the calendar gets pushed around.
Yeah.
But if we get to that point, Rod, and Sam Cosmi has to make a decision based on, well, we don't think you're a first-round pick now, we think you're more of a day two type pick, then something went horribly wrong. And if you got a full season out of him, then the problem might not be related to the player at that point.
Yeah, and when you talk about wingspan, it was the 3rd percentile. So he's in the bottom 3 percentile of offensive tackle prospects. Connor Williams was. So that's a big, almost a deal breaker for some teams. So,
yeah.
And it was 77.
It's like a wide receiver running a 4.7. Like
exactly.
Off some people's board.
L.J. Humphrey.
Sorry, you're off our board.
Yeah, so that drops you out of the first round if you say are just 1 out of 33 at the bottom.
That's why a lot of people look at Connor Williams' Rod as a guard.
I remember that.
Kick
Yeah, he's a guard.
Dallas smart by picking up a guy in talent, be a guard in the second round. That's value.
They're thinking about giving him snaps at center just to experiment because Travis Frederick retired on him prematurely. So.
Yeah, and then what they do, go draft another Wisconsin center.
Yeah, man, they're smart. I love the Cowboys.
Wisconsin center, replace him with a Wisconsin center.
That's one of the great things the Cowboys do. They just stockpile linemen. They're like, we don't know what to draft. Draft another lineman.
Get him.
Just draft another.
Smart. It's like Shanahan with D linemen.
Yes, Shanahan. He always defaults to D linemen. Hey, stack of strength, man. It's like Texas and safeties.
Those are rare.
Stack of strength.
There's some thought now at the Cowboys. Connor Williams could be their kind of swing everything guy.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a guard,
Great
maybe
idea.
he's a tackle, maybe
manufactured
he's a center.
depth.
Right.
I mean, that's ideally not what you want out of a second round pick, but hell, I mean, if he's your 6th man at every position.
Just until his contract is up and he'd be like, all right, while you're with us, this will be your role, but you can go somewhere else and play whatever you want to play.
And again, Rod, I mean, maybe you don't get a starter out of him, but you've got some value out of that second round pick, and then you're not giving him the extension at that point.
No, I agree.
That's why it's a massive year for Connor Williams.
Well, it is. Yeah, no, it is. We've talked about that on the show. It's a big year for Connor Williams because I think if it doesn't work out this year with them experimenting a little bit and having a void without Travis Frederick, they're going to move on. They might end up trading him or just not releasing him. I mean,
and if he's able to have multiple positions, it'll just add that value because I know we've talked about it a ton here, but it was cool seeing Isaiah Simmons discuss it. Did you see the headline right when he was talking, right before he got drafted by Kingsbury? He was like, I think teams should really realize you only have a 53-man roster. If you draft me, it's like you have 56 players. And he just went, and that was the headline of his exact quote, explaining sort of what we talked about of manufactured depth. And if, say, you are deficient or a guy on the border, but you're Connor Williams being open to backing up all 5 positions, you then can maybe be, well, hey, Jerry, now I'm 54, 55, and 56 too, because you don't have to worry about those. Yeah, huge.
So real quick, I want to get to a couple things in this Caden Stearns call, and I want to get y'all's take on this. So one thing he said that Caden Stearns talked about in this call was that the pandemic and the ramifications of it, some of it might be a blessing in disguise. He said, number one, the communication between the teammates has been better than it otherwise would because you want to check in on guys, make sure guys are doing okay, their families are fine. The second thing, Rod, he talked about, this really gives guys a chance to get their bodies right. And when you think about some of these guys, if some of these guys played peewee football and then went into middle school and then to high school, and especially if your high school had spring training where you're in pads, this is the first chance some guys have ever had since they started playing ball to let their bodies rest.
I agree with that.
Now,
That's a good point.
The component you're missing in this is the strength and conditioning component as we know it. And as Sam Ellinger said, Caden Stearns said the same thing. Look, Yancey's giving them workouts. Here's a workout if you have nothing at home except maybe resistance bands, and maybe you got some milk jugs laying around. You can fill them with water or rocks or whatever. Or maybe you got and Caden said he's fortunate enough, he's got a little weight set up in his garage. So, hey, you got a barbell. Here's some stuff you can do. So guys have workout plans.
Inventive MacGyver in it.
But he's from a family, too, that's workout thing, right? His
brother played Oklahoma State.
Yeah, so they probably already accumulated like weights and all kind of stuff. You know
That's your San Antonio Metroplex Ellinger, like how Ellinger can have all of the Austin guys come work out with him and then go work out with Stearns there.
So, Rod, I'll pose this to you since you've been in this bubble, this football bubble. I look at it and say, yeah, it can be a negative. Like whenever you do get back to contact, whether guys you have a mini camp in July or you get back in August or whatever, you do worry about the physical impact of that, of guys being so long without contact and then jumping back into it without having the strength conditioning component. You are setting yourself up probably for some guys to have injuries. But I'm of the opinion, I think that negative is outweighed by the benefit of what is this team going to look like when guys actually are able to now let injuries really heal and let their bodies heal. And whenever you get guys back, you are going to get a team back that is, for Tom Herman, maybe a guy like Caden Stearns that's battled knee injuries his whole time at Texas, maybe you are actually going to get a 100% Caden Stearns.
Like we did it with Jonathan Gray or something where it seemed like a guy came in and had 5,000 carries on him already, you know, and it's like that's, especially if you're one of these kids growing up in Texas, and I heard you on the drive-in talking about it, like we're talking pee-wee football, middle school football, and summer camps, and then this is there. I remember my class in 02 is one of the first that did 7-on-7s even, toward like just the constant body tear that you have. Exactly, and then these kids in the specialization these days, they play more football than you ever have.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, a healthy Caden Stearns, we hadn't seen it since his true freshman year.
That was his great
year. And that was
year.
when he was one of the best safeties in the country. So, yeah, if he's healthy, I mean, you're talking about a guy that's can play in an All-American type status. So I'm with you. I mean, that's something that's this is an unprecedented event, and we've never really seen anything like it. That may be one of the few benefits that comes out of the whole thing is that, got a lot of guys who have been in that grind for a decade plus. And
all the Texas kids.
You know what I mean? Well, that's why I didn't play football until I was in 7th grade. Like tackle football, like with pads on until I was in 7th grade. And I think, honestly, I probably would have burnt out or hurt myself a little bit sooner and ended my career, because I truly believe that you only got a certain amount of reps in your body. The game's just too hard on you. It's amazing when guys can play like Frank Gore still playing for the Jets. Like that's unbelievable, man. That feat, I'm telling you.
Superhuman.
It really is, man. It is extraordinary to be able to do that, because the game, and like you said, the year-round training and all that, it just grinds on you so much, and to do it for a decade plus, whether it be since you started when you were 15 or you started in Pee Wee League, your body is just not made to put up with that kind of grind, and it just deteriorates so much.
And kids play even younger these days.
I mean, Gronk talked about how Gronk was in tears 2 years ago when he retired, talking about how hard the game has been on his body. He was like, I don't even find joy in my life anymore, because literally it leads to a depression. When your body's not in good shape, everybody knows it leads to a physiologically a mental depression, and then it becomes a cycle. And he talked about that year off. Now he wants to play again. Now it helps that he's not playing with Belichick, because Belichick notoriously, like Saban, will grind on you. Right. It's like dog years, they say, when you're under that kind of regime. Now it produces results, but it also grinds up guys like in a meat grinder. So I think that Gronk, he's kind of another one of these poster boys. Like the COVID is going to help all those guys, because he needed the break, and he's talked about how fresh his body feels now. And
you look at, the laundry list from your Patrick Willis's to your Kuechly's. I mean, we saw first your Barry Sanders, but to your Calvin Johnson, like you've had all these league guys. What if they would have had just in that incidental year off, where if Ricky didn't need that at 25, 26 after all of his carries, if you just got that between college and the pros. So it's just a silver lining that could possibly come from the situation. And then it's worth mentioning that, Jeff, you would know more, but I assume that kids are playing even more at the varsity level younger. Even then in your day and my day. So you have freshmen and sophomores, they're playing 3 or 4. It's like how Jonathan Gray was the lead back in Toledo since his freshman year.
Like the other guy who we haven't talked about on the injury, like Horns 24/7, our roundtable topic this week was which guys are underhyped for this offseason. And the guy I picked on defense was B.J. Foster. because you forget at times how much that shoulder injury set him back last year.
Yeah.
And my point was, go back to 2018 and think about what a healthy B.J. Foster looked like.
Yeah.
It was one of the, maybe the biggest, as good as Caden Stearns was, I don't think Todd Orlando had an impact defender like B.J. Foster. He was a guy that could play over the top, in the slot. He was your best blitzer, like so many different things he could do for you.
Bludgeoner.
Right, so.
Worked well for him being off.
There's a guy like that, and coming off the shoulder surgery, he's not going to have to worry about rushing back. Like he'll be good to go. The other guy who this is going to help, Sam Ehlinger. Because Matt, to your point, how much football guys are playing. Think about Sam at that position, Rod. Not only are you playing that position, and you go through spring practice in high school, but you're leading the 7-on-7s. You're throwing all the time. This is the first time, maybe since he was a kid, that Sam Ehlinger's had a chance to let just let the body rest a little bit.
Because he was fighting through injuries. Like he was going like a pro player at Westlake. Like he had multiple season-ending injuries, but fighting back for injury for one more season. Like that's how professionals play, and he's doing that at like 14.
I watched him beat Katie on one leg. In a regular season game.
That's crazy.
That's a lot. No, I
played basically damn near that whole game with a torn meniscus.
Yeah, and if you go and start talking about a team full, now everybody across college football is going to have the same situation.
Right.
But you're talking about players that are key top-end players that are quite physical, so can really help, especially in a conference that's known as like a finesse conference if you come back with physicality.
It was 2019, the first year Sam hadn't had an injury in
that we know of.
5 years.
But he did have the rib deal.
I know, but the one that missed the game missed game time because that's just because he's a tough SOB.
Since his junior year of high school,
pretty much, like going on 4 years, That's a good point.
But to your point, Matt, everybody gets that advantage. But I think this goes back into Tom Herman's mindset. If I've got the very best of my guys, I think all of my guys at 100% are going to beat just about everybody else's at 100%.
Yes.
I love that.
And if your bodies feel better and you're in a conference that's viewed finessing, then you can be physical. That's huge.
Well, this also goes though to Yancey McKnight now because I'm not knocking Yancey McKnight or anything, but one of the reasons for all these injuries, one of the beliefs was that something was going on with the strength and conditioning program, and I don't know if they investigated that or not, or at least that was one of my theories. I'm going to say a lot of people.
That's usually where the finger gets pointed first when you have injuries. The strength program.
Yeah, well, I mean, you should investigate it. And I wonder, part of the deep dive for Tom Herman, did he investigate that? That is something you need to look at because if guys come back and they are healthy and yet come back into a strength and conditioning program that is somehow exacerbating some of those injuries, that's not necessarily a good thing. I'm not saying anything is happening, but it is worth looking into. Also, part of it was just Todd Orlando's terrible technique for tackling that he would teach these guys to launch themselves like missiles into ball carriers, which honestly I'd never heard of before. I always thought you would bring your feet in you out of control, under control, but no, they were literally taught that Oklahoma, that travesty you saw with CeeDee Lamb juking a lot of guys because they were diving and putting their head down. That's actually what they were taught. They were taught to launch themselves into players. There's quotes from Todd Orlando talking about that, and it's like, I don't know who taught you how to tackle, but that's not how you're supposed to tackle. You know what I mean? Like that ain't it. Whatever it was, that's why we led the Big 12 in missed tackles, but a lot of those missed tackles ended up with guys getting hurt because they would launch themselves into defenders and shoulders come out because they were out of position and they're reaching with arms and all that kind of stuff.
And I've seen, I was at a clinic where Chris Ash was giving a lecture, and half the lecture, the vast majority of it was kind of his thoughts on tackling and how he kind of had to swallow his pride and said, look, I've been teaching tackling wrong this whole time, and you had to go back and reevaluate it. He's a firm believer in Pete Carroll teaching that rugby-style tackling. Yeah. And a lot of the drills, Rod, he went through a lot of drill tape at Ohio State. Man, a lot of those drills are either low impact in terms of contact or no contact. You're just teaching you're just kind of getting that muscle memory of this is where your hat goes. This is where
your feet should be. This is where your arms should be. Your base should be here. Yep, that's exactly right.
And I'll pull it up and try to tweet it out. But Pete Carroll did ESPN did a feature on Pete Carroll changing the way tackling. He was involved with the concussion stuff. It was last offseason. Yeah. But if fans want to know what we're talking about, you can just Google it, Pete Carroll, and they'll have like a 30-minute thing on it.
No, it's supposed to be a safer brand of tackling and more effective is what the Pete Carroll would tell you.
And keep you healthy because you aren't ever really contacting in practice.
Exactly. And Chris Ash, I love the story that he had to convince Urban Meyer to revamp their tackling techniques. Like, no, I've done the research on it. It's better, it's more effective, and it's safer. Our guys will be a lot healthier practicing this technique in practice. And they've, well, at least Pete Carroll will claim that he's done the studies that it leads to less injuries in the game as well because it's a proper tackling technique, so less upper body injuries as a result of tackling.
You know, if you know nothing else about Chris Ash, Rod, I know you like this about him after I went to that clinic. Yeah. Like the two people that Chris Ash has learned more defensive football from are Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick.
Love it, man. You know I love both of those guys.
Like he's good friends with Mike Vrabel, and he's apparently leaned on Joe Judge a lot in terms of how to teach tackling technique.
Dude, you're getting me excited. You're titillating me. You know what I mean? Like seriously, I'm getting excited. For real, that's because he's a football theorist. I believe, and I think Yurcich is too. I think that, I believe I'm the one who coined the term, but I'm sure it's going to make the rounds. I think you're a football theorist. A football theorist is willing to go down a rabbit hole to solve a problem, and also not only willing to experiment, but also willing to go outside the box, right? To use the most creative means to solve a problem. Whether it be staring you right there in the face or it's something you got to go search for. And I don't know if Tom Herman is necessarily a football theorist, really. I don't know. I'm not saying you can't be a good coach without being a football theorist, but football theorists, most of them are willing to indulge what most people consider to be the crazy, creative, wacky approach to it. And Pete Carroll's that kind of guy. Belichick's always been that kind of guy. People thought some of the stuff Belichick did was crazy. Man, that's crazy. Why is he drafting 11 quarterbacks even after he's got Tom Brady? Because Belichick's got his own damn way of doing things.
It understands value.
Yeah.
I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole.
No,
one example of a football theorist is John Harbaugh. And
John Harbaugh is a football theorist.
And I heard this about John Harbaugh. Somebody in the Ravens organization said, one of the things that, John Harbaugh is one of the smartest football coaches you'll ever be around. And one of the things that makes him so smart is he's smart enough to realize he doesn't know everything.
Exactly.
So he's going to surround himself with people that do have the answers, that can't find the answers. And I think that's a big part of being a football theorist, right? Like we talked about with Chris Ash, admitting he had to swallow his pride and relearn how to teach proper tackling. Part of being a football theorist is realizing when you're willing to admit that you're wrong.
Yep.
And that you don't know everything.
And you embrace that new knowledge.
Being open-minded, open to new ideas.
Open to new
Something
ideas.
Like that. You'll listen. You're able to listen.
No doubt.
Can I just throw this out there? Like, Rod, one of the knocks on, we talked about Frank Gore, and I just pulled up Frank Gore's Pro Football Reference page. One of the knocks on Frank Gore when he came out of Miami, and it was true because he couldn't stay healthy. It was injuries.
It's crazy.
He blew out drafted a heck of a lot higher.
He had 2 ACL injuries in college.
Because if that backfield where it was him, Clinton Portis, Najee Davenport, Willis McGahee, all those guys were in the same running back room.
A lot of them got hurt, too.
Frank Gore was the most talented guy in that room. There was never a question about that. He just couldn't stay healthy.
I forgot.
You realize Frank Gore in 2013 for 15 NFL seasons at the running back position has played 226 regular season games. It's still going.
And it's not like he was like a part-time player.
No.
This dude was like
15 times 15 is 225. He's at 226. He's averaging more than 15 games for 15 seasons.
204 starts in his career.
Dude, he's got a son about to go to college and play football.
No, I was joking that
what the hell?
That he could be like LeBron. Like LeBron will play with Bronny in one point. Now Frank Gore, in theory, could almost play with Frank Gore Jr.
That would be
at that position that has an incredibly short shelf life.
I don't know.
To damn near be in your 40s.
Somebody needs to interview him and ask him what is he doing? Like, what did you start doing?
He comes on Levitard's show a lot.
Take care of yourself.
Guys.
Like, what is it? Like, do you do anything that's out of the norm, or are you just a physical freak? Did you change your lifestyle? Like, what did you do?
He says he's a freak. Like, he works out. He just loves football. He's a gamer and just loves football.
Yeah, a lot of people love football, but their body breaks the hell down.
True.
Like, I need to know what you're doing. Yeah,
this is what his answer was.
Yeah, your body just breaks down. At the running back position, science has proven the body breaks down
so
there
he's an alien.
Disproportionately more so than anybody. Yeah, what the hell is going on?
Like Terrence Newman.
He thinks it isn't normal. Yeah.
One of your contemporaries, Rod,
crazy,
y'all came out in the same draft, Terrence Newman. Terrence Newman played 15 years in the league. I think we're going to agree. 15 years at corner and 15 years at running back.
Yes.
Brother, that's years. I don't know how he's doing it, man. It's unbelievable. And the load that he's had to carry, it's not that he had load management. This dude was the focal point of an offense for like 4-5 years. Like,
and he's not the finesse back where you're getting wide receiver. That's
he's not
just
trying to hit the perimeter all the time.
He is bludgeoning
between the tackles. That's crazy, man. I don't know. Sorry, that's a random tangent.
No,
but that was
it's
fun.
worth mentioning.
The only other
respect needed.
thing, the only
Yeah.
thing to me that's crazier than that is you look at Bruce Matthews' career. Bruce Matthews played damn near 300 regular season games as an offensive lineman,
That's hardcore.
and that is from this
Yeah,
is
that's pretty-
like
that's pretty
like again we go down like football rabbit holes on this
Yeah.
show because that's just what we do.
That's crazy.
Think about this: Bruce Matthews is an offensive lineman, Rod, as an interior offensive lineman. From 1988 through 2001, never missed a regular season start.
Crazy, dude. Hey, I'm gonna love you blue guys, so you ain't gotta tell me, man. That's crazy.
And Frank Gore, the way that it just seems like
start.
another day at the office. Like that's all he does is play football. It's all he knows. It's like, well, he grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment with 13 people. It's like for him, he's been a guy that like football was.
He's probably
something
been
that
getting.
was
He's
his
like, I gotta get out of his house.
It was his routine
Yeah.
and his
Right.
regimen. It's his life. And
This
it's
is
all he
insane when you
knows.
think about it like this.
Something-
Bruce Matthews' rookie year was 1983, the year I was born. His last season to play was 2001, my senior year of high school.
That is crazy. That's literally that is unbelievable. I didn't realize that.
So when I
knew he was
played my
beast,
first
but I
game
didn't
as a high
realize
school
that.
senior, Bruce Matthews had been playing pro football as long as I had been alive as an interior offensive lineman.
That's
in
insane.
a that was in an era too where safety was not the top priority for
No.
the NFL. There wasn't no concussion protocol. And I'm not doing that like, air quotes to make fun of it. I'm saying the NFL was negligent and irresponsible back then, but they didn't take care of their players like they do today. That's old school football, bottom of piles, getting punched and kicked and jabbed and everything else. Man, yeah, that's crazy, though. That's wild.
Insane, man.
That is
So,
insane.
Bruce Matthews, props to you
Shout
for
out,
being
man.
a freak.
You and Frank Gore, man, shout out to play this game that long.
That only T knew out. Even
Tino's
played
good,
15 years.
but that's corner, man. Corner, you can avoid contact. Trust me, I play the game. You can avoid contact.
Yes.
You ain't got to get. He probably hits. Seriously, probably hit 5, 6 times a game and hit somebody.
I was watching the
You know what I mean?
Texas Ohio State
Yeah.
from 05. The only skilled position guy left's Ted Ginn.
Exactly.
He had it figured out. Like,
But dude,
get out of bounds.
Dude, you talking about getting in that in the scrum there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right there in between the tackles and that kind of stuff, dude. That is a different world. It takes grown men to be in there.
And a key indicator that Frank Gore Jr. will be great. Look what Matthews' family ended up spawning.
Hey, man,
Jake Matthews and Clay Matthews.
One of
It's
the
like
greatest
that's
football
just in
families
the
of all
family.
time.
So I got a feeling Frank Gore Jr. might be in the league for 15 years too.
I've seen a lot of really good offensive linemen at the high school level. Chantrell Henderson, Tyron Smith jumps out there. In terms of high school offensive linemen, man, Jake Matthews might be the best I've ever seen.
Who's he with now?
He's still with the Falcons, isn't
Still
he?
with the Falcons? Okay.
I'm
No, I
double
didn't-
check it.
This has been a while.
Yeah, he's damn good.
I just remember watching him at Fort Bend Elkins and thinking that dude's gonna play in the NFL for 10 years. I don't know if he's gonna do it for 17 years like his dad did, but
Why would he want to?
exactly.
Yeah, he's gonna make more money than his dad did in a shorter time span, just because different era.
Yeah, Jake Matthews still with the Falcons.
Good for him.
2 years ago, yeah, they got a nice 5-year, $75 million extension.
Here's some quick Frank Gore's 12 NFL records, 12 seasons with 1,200 yards from scrimmage, and he has most consecutive seasons with at least 500 yards rushing 15, at least 600 yards rushing 14, and at least 700 yards rushing 13, tied with Emmitt Smith. Like, that's insane to be that consistent.
That is freaky.
This is nuts, man.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Yeah.
All right, so I want to get to some buy or sell stuff in the time we've got left, and we're definitely not going to get all these this week. We'll continue this in the next week's show. So, hey, if you're a subscriber, you already know what the topic of next week's show is going to be. This kind of encompasses a lot of the offensive stuff we've talked about. So, I want to go with this. So we'll do one offense, one defense. We'll save the rest for next week. Okay. Buy or sell. Sam Ehlinger is in New York at the end of the season for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Travis Crum, the best damn videographer in the podcast game, has given us a thumbs up that he thinks Sam Ehlinger is going to be in New York for the Heisman ceremony.
I think he will.
It's so hard. Listen, he should be, because right now he's probably the third best quarterback in the country, at least in that conversation. Top 5 at least. Some people really, he'll throw, in addition to Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, they'll throw Sam Howell in there and some other guys in there. But Sam's right in that conversation. My concern is that he doesn't have proven commodities at wide receiver. It is a new system, but the system will focus on Sam. I think that actually Yurcich coming in with a new system helps Sam. Oh, man. I'm going to say sell. I'm gonna say no.
I think there'll be
I'm
like a
gonna say
Lawrence
no.
Fields.
Yeah, because
amount of
whoever the hell
room-
Lincoln Riley coaches.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Whoever that guy
And
is,
that's
he's
what
got
I
a
was gonna
special
say.
thing. Now, I don't know if it's those spots. Some running back's going to make it. You know what I mean? I just don't know. And he doesn't have a lot of wide receivers. So he may not even have a lot of, his numbers throwing the ball may not be that prolific, but we may see NFL caliber throws out of him because I think he's going to be throwing receivers open who can't create separation. He's going to be throwing to leverage, meaning DB on the right shoulder, I'm throwing it on the left. He's going to have touch. We saw some of that last year. I think that'll continue, but I wonder if he'll have the prolific productivity without Colin Johnson and Lil Jordan Humphrey and Devin Duvernay. Somebody's going to fill that role.
Team success.
Yeah,
like it isn't like back in the day when Ricky could win a Heisman with 8 wins or something. Like you nowadays have to be so like he could have a great year
or play in the Big 12.
Exactly, he could have a great year, and if Texas goes 9-3, he's probably not going to get invited there. No fault of his own, probably. But if he is maybe not as good as the previous scenario, but Texas is 12-1, you might be going to New York.
He's going to need numbers like 2018 Sam, and I don't know if you get 2018 Sam numbers without that wide receiving core, number one, and I think a lot of the folks of the offense are going to be on that backfield.
So let me ask you this.
That's where the talent is.
Can this offense, and by proxy this team, can they both get to their ceiling if Sam Ehlinger's not in New York?
Possibly, but probably not.
It'd be tougher, probably not.
Yeah.
No.
He'll help carry us.
Because I don't think they can. I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah, I agree with that. No, he's got. Yeah, I mean, basically him going to New York is kind of what Matt says. It equals it somehow. It's going to equate to team success, or it's going to be linked to team success.
Yep.
So that'll mean yes, Texas is playing for a Big 12 title, which means they probably won 10 games.
9 or 10.
And that means he probably takes the spot of that OU quarterback.
Yeah.
Like it's basically will come down to the OU quarterback if they win and go that way, or if Texas defeats Oklahoma and maybe Ehlinger gets that seat.
Yeah. No, it could.
Because Fields and Lawrence are going to be in it. I can almost guarantee
exactly. They are almost predetermined to be in there. And like I said, Lincoln Riley, man, the first quarterback that he's like handpicked, I'm scared of that too. That's scary. Like everybody's like, "Ooh, thank God he didn't even finish for a quarterback." I'm like, thank God this guy may actually be better because he's been grooming him. He really likes the little Spencer Rattler or whatever.
Here are the odds.
So that freaks me out.
Right now, Fields 3.5 to 1. This is according to Sportsbook AG. Lawrence 5 to 1. Yep. Spencer Rattler.
You know he's in there.
12 to 1. But Sam Ehlinger and Jamie Newman from Georgia are both at 14 to 1. They're tied. So like you're talking about Spencer Rattler at 12, and then Texas, and then Newman. So it's going to be between the two.
Yeah, no, it could easily happen.
And then Chuba Hubbard at 20 to 1. How about that?
Oh, Chuba. So Rod, let me ask you this: do you think? I mean, because the debate is going to be between Sam Ehlinger and Brock Purdy. I think people would say Brock Purdy is the better NFL prospect.
Yeah, they like Purdy.
Is Sam Ehlinger the best quarterback in the Big 12? As
a college football player?
Yeah, take the NFL out.
Right now, yes. Right now, yes, I would say that. But like I said, if Spencer Rattler starts lighting it up next year, I wouldn't be shocked. Because remember, like I said, before LSU, we were all sure that Sam's a better quarterback than Joe Burrow, and it's not even close. And LSU fans were saying that too. And literally, I think 4 games into the season, everybody's like, I think the Joe Burrow guy is better than Sam. So the conversation could change really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we're getting to the point where there are not going to be any down years for quarterback play in the Big 12.
No.
Because you look at this, you're like, oh, Jalen Hurts is moving on, and we don't know what's going to happen to Baylor with Charlie Brewer. Like, where's big quarterback play going to be in the Big 12? Well, Sam Ehlinger's coming back. And Brock Purdy, I think people will call him the best NFL prospect of these Big 12 quarterbacks. Yeah. And, Matt, you just mentioned Chuba Hubbard. Tylan Wallace is back. That's a hell of a lot of weaponry Spencer Sanders has. And he's got another year with Mike Gundy in that offense.
Good when he came to Texas, man.
And Spencer Sanders is 40 to 1. He's on the list.
Yeah. And then you think about
Charlie Brewer 60 to 1.
You think about some of the young quarterbacks in this league that fly, like a Max Duggan at TCU who flashed a little bit. I think West Virginia is kind of one of those sneaky teams that could. I don't know if they're going to win the Big 12, but I think they could beat somebody that impacts who does win it. If Jarrett Doege ends up being the guy for Neil Brown going forward, and Alan Bowman's been really good at Tech. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy.
He's 100 to 1.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. What Big 12 has always been a quarterback conference. Say what you want. It's one of the great things about, if I was recruiting DBs, I'd be like, dude, you want to play against the best quarterbacks in the country. You know, every NFL scout's going to be watching these quarterbacks, right? Yeah. and they're gonna be watching you.
The best passing
attack.
The best schemes.
The best, to recruit DBs is pretty easy. It's like you want to play against the best offenses that the NFL's watching, not only to steal the schemes, but they're also watching because they want to watch the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, which are highly coveted. They will see you, whether they want to see you or not. They gonna see you. Now you may hurt your draft stock. You may be out there getting toasted, but if you're out there, you make a couple of plays. Hey man, you can rise on somebody's draft boards. Yeah, ask Brandon Jones about it. You're like, oh well, hell, Brandon Jones in the third round. Everybody's like he's gonna be, he's in the second tier of safeties. Now it turns out they like the way Brandon Jones matched up against Big 12 offenses and Big 12 wideouts. And LSU.
If I was any other school in the Big 12, if I was Baylor, I'd be going around and just showing it's like, hey, look at the skill position, look at this NFL depth chart, look at this depth chart. I'd be showing them the Chiefs. I'd be showing them. It's like, hey man, these are all Big 12 guys. If you want to come and show you can stop NFL guys, come here.
You're damn right.
So on the Sam question, Travis behind the camera is buying. Travis thumbs up. Matt, you're buying. Sam?
Yeah, barely.
I'm a seller.
Rod, you're a seller right now?
I'm gonna sell it. I'm gonna sell.
I like the odds.
I'm kind of 50. I'm like 53-47 sell.
Yeah.
And this is where it depends on how close it is, because some years you get 4 or 5, normally just 4, but some years you get 3 when there's only 3 real candidates. And that's just where right now Sam's the 4th best odds. It's sort of Fields, Lawrence, but it could have been one of those 3 years where they just will take a third, and a 4th.
And we not. And there's always a chance somebody that's not even on that damn list that's not even on any radar, like Joe Burrow. And we've seen that before, like that, not even on a list. Remember Kyler Murray kind of did that. Like Kyler Murray wasn't on those lists, and everybody was like, oh, well, Kyler Murray's he's the man.
Well, because all these others quarterbacks, Ian Book, Notre Dame, Mac Jones, Alabama, Bo Nix, Auburn.
It could be somebody coming out of nowhere
too.
It's just, I think I'm gonna sell. I love Sam. I think he's going to be great, but I'll sell on the Heisman.
It comes down to 2 games where Sam has to have marquee games, and we talked about this last year when we talked about his Heisman odds. It comes down to LSU and Oklahoma.
Yep.
If Sam goes into Baton Rouge and they find a way to win that game, then I think almost regardless of what his numbers look like, if they get that W, then he shoots up right in there with Fields and Lawrence. He's right in the thick of it.
Agreed.
By the same token, if they lose that game, as we saw last year, Rod, regardless of what the numbers look like, you lose, then you're playing from behind, and then you basically have 1 game to make it up in the middle of your season.
It's like you got to win to get in, to get in that conversation.
So in theory, Texas could be 10-2, and Sam could have no shot.
No, but if you beat Oklahoma and LSU, you'll be looking good.
That depends on what that 10-2 is.
Yeah.
Those 2 losses are
LSU and Oklahoma.
It's like, nah,
you have no shot.
You got to have that Heisman moment, right? We all remember the Heisman moments of the Cam Newton and the Kyler Murray.
3rd and 17.
Yeah, exactly. You remember those?
Where I was going.
They keep on throwing it.
Exactly. So he's got to have that moment. He had those in 2018, actually, randomly enough, but he wasn't going to be up for the Heisman because he wasn't on any radar back then. He has a season like 2018, which is also a season where they competed for the Big 12 title and they won, double-digit games. So getting back to the original point that Matt made, you got to win, baby.
And if he's marginal, it'll end up coming down. He has one thing in his side for an invite. The Heisman Trust might let the senior guy get an invite if he's on the cusp of coming. So that's the only thing working for him.
And this Texas, the propaganda machine.
Exactly.
If it's close, the propaganda machine will start working overtime.
They want
then
ratings.
LHN would like him to make it, the ESPN connection. He's a great story. So, I think if it's close,
he
may get pushed over the top. Yeah.
Going back to 2018, if you win that game against Maryland, I think we can all agree a lot of things are on a different trajectory at that point.
Oh, my God. Yeah. No, I agree. That's a great point. Because remember the number that the Power 5 quarterbacks who had rushed for at least 15 touchdowns and thrown for at least 25 touchdowns, that short list of guys that all of them had won the Heisman except Sam Ehlinger, Lamar Jackson, I think it was Cam Newton, it was like Marcus Mariota, Johnny Manziel was on that list. And, that 2018, that statistical year.
Tim Tebow was the other one.
Tim Tebow was the other. That was a Heisman caliber year. Like you said, it took, I don't know, it was weird. It took a little while to materialize, right?
Yeah.
Because it started slow. It started behind when you lost to Maryland.
That's how bad that Maryland. It took you beating Oklahoma to get that Maryland taste out of your mouth, and even then, I don't think it was still all the way gone.
Great point.
Well, and then you didn't win the Big 12 championship, so then that's the tipping point.
It's a different. Yeah, you're right. It's a different conversation altogether. Interesting.
Because at that point, let's just go revisit history. You beat Maryland, and then you beat USC at home. and you get that TCU monkey off your back, and you beat Oklahoma
You're number one.
At that point, you're the starting quarterback of an undefeated Texas team. Hell yeah, you're right in the thick of that.
I was about to say, yeah, you probably
That just beat Kyler Murray, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. What were they ranked after they beat Oklahoma?
6th.
6th?
Yeah.
Damn, so you might be like in the top 3. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
Right, anyway,
so
fan fiction.
Yeah. I wanted
What else do we have to remember
Right?
these days? Remember?
I want to get to another one, but you know what? This buy or sell stuff, we'll just save this for next week because there's some really good stuff.
that was
we're gonna
fun.
get to, and
I like
we'll,
that
We'll
buy or
save it
sell.
for next week. We got some buy or sell, some over-unders. We'll get into that next week. I just, felt like...
Tease me another one. Just tease it. We won't talk about it. Just what it would have been. We won't discuss it. Give me one that
we
would've
talked
been.
about defensive turnarounds,
Wet my
Rod.
palate.
What if I told you that in the first year of Manny Diaz, Vance Bedford, and Todd Orlando, Texas managed to finish with a top 30 scoring or total defense in each of those years?
I remember those. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's going to happen again, baby. It's happening again. Chris Ash, you can count on it.
And
have a great year.
of those two categories, scoring defense and total defense, your worst ranking in the first year for those new coordinators
Was 28?
was 2017.
Okay. What was it?
Todd Orlando's total defense, 41st in the country.
41st. Yeah.
But you were ranked in the triple digits the year before.
Yeah.
And you're doing that in the Big 12, which means insert us into, say, some
Same guys, too, by the way.
ACC
Most of the same
conference. That defense,
Yeah.
top 10.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be good.
well,
So, yeah. If the offense is good, dude, they're going to be a good team. We know the defense is going to be good.
So we'll get all that
That's
next
it.
week.
That's fine.
We got Sam.
Rod, appreciate everything, man.
Anytime, brother. Anytime. It's great.
Matt, thanks for everything, man.
You're more than welcome.
Big thanks to Travis, the best damn videographer in the podcast.
For
Thanks
sure.
everybody
For
at the
sure.
Austin Radio Network and the Horn, 1049, 1019, AM 1260, streaming on the Horn app and thehornfm.com. You can get Rod B on the triple option each and every afternoon from 3 to 7.
Shameless plug.
You can also get myself and Craig Way each and every day on Light the Tower from 10 to noon. And thanks to Matt, you can get our archives, classic interviews, classic shows on the Longhorn Blitz SoundCloud page.
Yep, just type in Longhorn Blitz.
And don't forget to get this podcast anywhere you get your podcast. Just search Horns 24/7 Podcast. You get us, State of Recruiting, and the flagship, all by searching Horns 24/7 Podcast, whether that's Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. Just search Horns 24/7 Podcast. For the Horn family, for the Horns 24/7 family, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for downloading and listening, and we will catch you again on the next episode.
You've been listening to Longhorn Blitz with horns247.com. Remember, for the latest Longhorn news 24/7, visit horns247.com.